Imagine farming in the early 1900s. You're staring at a machine weighing as much as a house, with exposed gears, no brakes, and zero safety regulations. It wasn't just hard work, it was a daily gamble with death. We often romanticize these vintage iron beasts, but today we're revealing the gritty reality. From steam giants that exploded like bombs to tractors that flipped backward on their drivers, here are the 10 most dangerous American tractors ever built. Buckle up. Actually don't, because none of these had seatbelts. Number 1, the Waterloo Boy. Before John Deere became the green and yellow giant we know today, there was the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company. The Waterloo Boy was a machine that signaled the end of the horse era, but it brought a new kind of fear to farm. This tractor was raw, loud, and incredibly unforgiving. It ran on kerosene, which meant the fumes alone were enough to make an operator dizzy after a long day in the heat. But the real danger lay in its open design. Every moving part was exposed. You had gears grinding and a massive flywheel spinning right next to the operator's limbs. If you slipped in the mud or lost your balance on the uneven terrain of an Iowa cornfield, there was no protective casing to save you. Starting the Waterloo Boy was a test of courage in itself. It required hand cranking a massive engine that had a nasty habit of kicking back. If the spark wasn't timed perfectly, the crank handle would whip in reverse with enough force to shatter a forearm or jaw. It happened more often than historical records care to admit. Driving it felt like sitting on top of a controlled explosion. The vibration was so intense it could rattle teeth loose, and the noise was deafening, leading to hearing loss for an entire generation of farmers. It's a legendary machine that paved the way for the John Deere legacy, but operating one required a level of grit and perhaps a lack of self-preservation that is hard to comprehend today. Number 2, the Farmall Regular. This tractor is an icon, the machine that truly replaced a horse for row crop farming because of its revolutionary tricycle front-end design. It allowed farmers to navigate between rows of corn with precision that four-wheel tractors just couldn't match. But that same design feature is what earned it a terrifying reputation on uneven ground. The narrow front wheels created a high center of gravity that formed a deadly triangle of instability. If a farmer took a corner too fast, or if one rear wheel dipped into a hidden badger hole or a washout, the Farmall Regular didn't just slide, it tipped. Rollovers became a gruesome reality of the Farmall era. Once that center of gravity shifted past the tipping point, there was nothing stopping thousands of pounds of iron from crushing the operator. Remember, there were no rollover protection structures or ROPS. In the 1920s, you were completely exposed. Despite this, the Farmall Regular was beloved for its versatility. It could plow, cultivate, and power belt-driven machinery. It's a strange dichotomy. The machine was a farmer's best friend and their worst nightmare. It makes you wonder, if you had to farm these hills back in 1924, would you have trusted the narrow front end or stuck with the mules? It's a terrifying choice to make. Number 3, the JIK steam traction engine. We have to step back a bit further to the era of steam, where the dangers were elemental. These weren't just vehicles, they were rolling power plants. A K-steam engine was a magnificent beast, hissing and groaning, powered by boiling water under immense pressure. The danger here wasn't just mechanical, it was thermal and explosive. The operator stood on a platform right next to the firebox, shoveling coal into a roaring fire, while monitoring a water glass that told him that the boiler was about to run dry. If the water level dropped too low and the crown sheet became exposed to the fire, the metal would weaken and fail, leading to a catastrophic boiler explosion. When a steam tractor exploded, it didn't just break. It leveled everything in a radius. It was essentially a bomb on wheels. Then there was the steam itself. A burst pipe or a leaky valve could spray superheated steam capable of stripping skin from bone in seconds. And let's not forget the weight. These titans weighed 10 to 20 tons. If you lost traction on a hill, there were no hydraulic brakes to save you. You were at the mercy of gravity and momentum. Yet, for all the terror they inspire now, they were the heavy lifters that broke the virgin prairies of the West. If you've ever seen one of these running at a county fair, you know the ground shakes. Now imagine operating it alone, miles from help. Number 4, The Fordson Model F, this is perhaps the most deceptive tractor on our list. It looks small, manageable, and friendly. Henry Ford did for tractors what he did for cars. He mass-produced them, making them affordable for the average family farm. It cost about the same as a team of horses, but worked all day without resting. However, the Model F had a dark secret that quickly became famous across rural America. It was light, which was good for not compacting soil, but it had a short wheelbase and a high-torque worm gear drive. This combination created a physics problem that often ended in tragedy. If the plow hit a rock or a deep root, and the rear wheels stopped turning, the torque had to go somewhere. Instead of the wheels spinning, the entire tractor would rotate around the rear axle. The front end would shoot up into the air, flipping the tractor backward on top of the driver in a split second. It happened so fast that farmers didn't have time to react. It became known as the Fordson Flip. There were no fenders on the early models either, so the driver was sitting right between the spinning steel cleats of the rear wheels. It was a machine that democratized farming, but killed many of its early adopters. Speaking of mass adoption and growing a community, just like Henry Ford changed the landscape of farming, we are trying to build a community of history lovers and machinery enthusiasts right here. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the mechanical past, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep the lights on and allows us to keep digging up these incredible stories for you. We are aiming to build the most engaged community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Now, let's get back to the steel and smoke. Number 5, the International Harvester Titan 10-20. The Titan is a machine that looks like it belongs in a steampunk fantasy rather than a farm field. It was one of the first tractors to try and bridge the gap between the massive steam engines and the smaller gas tractors. But the 10-20 was a chaotic mix of exposed mechanics. The engine was a slow-turning, single-cylinder giant that relied on massive flywheels to keep momentum. The danger here was sheer entanglement. The operator sat on a metal pan at the rear, surrounded by spinning shafts, chains, and belts. There were no guards. If your coattail caught in the drive chain, you were dragged into the machine. Furthermore, the cooling system was a large open tank of water on the front. On rough terrain, scalding hot water could slosh out, but the real beast was the starting mechanism. You often had to climb onto the wheel or stand in awkward positions to crank it over. It required a specific rhythm, and if the engine fired prematurely, it could throw a grown man several feet. The Titan 10-20 was built like a tank, and it had the stopping distance of a freight train. In the mud, steering was merely a suggestion. It required muscle, sweat, and constant vigilance to operate without losing a finger or a limb. Number 6, the Avery Undermount Steam Tractor. Most steam tractors had the engine mounted on top of the boiler, but Avery decided to mount the engine underneath on the frame, similar to a railroad locomotive. It was designed for better pulling power and stability, and aesthetically, it is one of the most beautiful tractors ever built. But from a safety perspective, it was a nightmare. Because the moving parts, the pistons, the rods, the crankshaft, were located underneath the boiler. Performing maintenance meant crawling under a hot, pressurized vessel. Imagine having to grease a bearing while hot oil drips on you, and a boiler full of superheated water sits inches above your face. Visibility was another major issue. The operator stood at the very back, trying to look past the massive boiler and the smokestack to see where they were going. In a field full of stumps or ditches, this blindness was deadly, and like the case, the heat was unbearable. In the middle of an American summer, with the sun beating down, the firebox roaring at 2,000 degrees, just inches from your legs, heat stroke was a very real killer. The Avery Undermount was a marvel of engineering, but demanded a sacrifice of comfort and safety that modern farmers wouldn't tolerate for a minute. Number 7, the Ford N-Series. You might be surprised to see this one on the list, because it is arguably the most popular vintage tractor in America. You probably know someone who still uses one to mow their pasture. But its danger lies in a specific design flaw regarding the power takeoff, or PTO. The N-Series did not have a live PTO. This meant the transmission and the PTO were connected. If you were running a heavy implement, like a bush hog mower, the spinning momentum of the mower blades would feed back through the transmission. Here's a terrifying scenario. You're mowing down a slope, and you approach a fence or a ditch. You press the clutch pedal to stop. On a modern tractor, you stop. On an 8N, the momentum of the heavy mower spinning behind you pushes the tractor forward, continuing to turn the rear wheels even with the clutch depressed. You are standing on the brakes. Panic rises in your chest, but the tractor keeps lunging forward, pushed by its own implement. This pushed countless farmers through fences, into ponds, and over embankments. It wasn't until the invention of the overrunning coupler that this issue was fixed, but to this day, rookie owners buy these tractors unaware of the danger. I'm curious, how many of you watching have experienced that push? That moment of panic, when the tractor won't stop? Let me know in the comments below. I know there are some stories out there. Number 8. The Meline Universal D. This tractor looks bizarre to modernize. It was essentially a two-wheeled power unit where the operator sat on the implement being pulled, such as a plow or a wagon, forming an articulated vehicle. It was marketed as the Universal Tractor because it could cultivate rows. But the design put the entire weight of the engine and drivetrain over the front axle, with the operator trailing behind. This made for incredibly tricky handling. If you were backing up, the unit could jackknife instantly, crushing the operator between the implement and the tractor wheels. The steering was done through a long steering column that extended back to the implement. The vibration was notorious. It was often called a kidney buster because the operator felt every single combustion stroke and every bump in the field. But the real danger was the balance. On steep hills, the Meline Universal was prone to losing traction and swinging wildly. If the connection between the tractor and the implement failed, the power unit would nosedive into the dirt, potentially catapulting parts or hot fluids back toward the driver. It was a bold experiment in front-wheel drive technology, but it was a perilous one. Number 9, the Rumley oil pull. If you have ever heard a Rumley run, you never forget it. They don't hum. They explode in slow motion. Chug, chug, chug. These massive machines burned a mix of kerosene and water, utilizing a unique cooling system that used oil instead of water in the radiator, hence the name oil pull. They were incredibly reliable, but they were also industrial monsters. The danger here was in the startup and the sheer mass. To start a Rumley, you didn't just pull a cord. You had to climb onto the massive flywheel, use your body weight to get rocking, and then hope it fired. Walking on the spokes of a flywheel to start an engine is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. If the engine caught and you didn't jump off in time, you could be thrown or sucked into the machinery. Once it was moving, the Rumley was slow, but it was unstoppable. It had torque that could pull a house down. If an operator got a limb caught in the belt pulley or the open gears, the engine wouldn't even stutter. It would just keep pulling. These tractors often ran continuously for days during harvest, leading to operator exhaustion, which is when mistakes happen. The Kerosene Annie, as it was affectionately known, was a beast that commanded respect or else. Number 10, the John Deere Model D. The tractor that cemented John Deere's place in history. It had the longest production run of any two-cylinder John Deere, lasting until 1953. It was simple, rugged, and sounded like a heartbeat, but the early Model DS were fraught with the same dangers of the era. They used a hand clutch located on the side. In a panic situation, your instinct is often to use your feet or grab the steering wheel tight, but to stop the Model D, you had to let go of the wheel and slam a lever. That split-second delay caused many accidents. Furthermore, the flywheel on the Model D protruded out the side, fully exposed on the earlier models. It was spinning right next to where the farmer would often stand to make adjustments. Loose clothing, corn stalks, or fence wire could easily get wrapped up in it. And like the Fordson, if you hooked the load too high, the Model D had enough torque to lift its front end. It wasn't just a machine, it was a member of the family for many, but it was a family member that could turn on you if you stopped paying attention for even a second. It represents a transition from the experimental era to the modern era, carrying the scars of both. Looking back at these metal beasts, it's clear why farming was and is so dangerous. These pioneers tamed the land with machines that had zero forgiveness. If this made you appreciate modern safety standards, give this video a like. And tell me in the comments, which of these dangerous machines would you be brave enough to drive? Don't forget to subscribe for more mechanical history. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.